It's my pleasure to introduce the 2025 Icon Award recipient. Each year, the School of Hospitality recognizes an experienced innovator. This year's honoree, Martha Sheridan, has made remarkable strides in transforming Boston's tourism landscape since assuming her role at Meet Boston in 2019. As a seasoned tourism leader, she now guides a 1,000-plus partnership organization dedicated to fostering a robust and equitable visitor economy in the region. Her leadership has been pivotal in securing major events, including 7 FIFA World Cup 2026 matches at Gillette Stadium and the historic hosting of the Army-Navy game in New England. Since taking reins, Sheridan has quadrupled the operating budget, as an accountant, I love that, of Meet Boston, an organization that she helped rebrand from Greater Boston Visitors and Convention Bureau in 2022. Thank God I got that right. Martha's leadership has helped position Boston on the global stage to attract more visitors and events to Boston. Martha is an icon who will continue reaching higher. Everyone who lives in the greater Boston region, particularly the 23 neighborhoods of Boston, is a beneficiary of her one-of-a-kind drive and love for spotlighting Boston as a world-class destination for both tradition and innovation. So please join me in congratulating Martha as the 2025 Icon Award recipient. Let's take a big step back and tell us, how did you get to hospitality at the initial stages?
Sure. So I am a proud graduate of the University of Rhode Island in 1983. During my summers while I was in school, I actually worked as a tour guide at the Breakers Mansion in Newport, and that gave me my first taste of tourism and hospitality, which has changed a lot. You know, back when I was in college, there were really no programs except for hotel management that were dedicated to the trade of tourism. So, you know, we kind of had to make our own way, those of us that have been in this business for a very long time. So from the Breakers, I ended up becoming a tour guide for a company called Paragon Tours, which was a large competitor to Colette Vacations back then, and traveled all over the US and Canada for 3 years on motor coaches. It was quite interesting. My clientele wasn't terribly young, so you can imagine I had to become very resourceful as a 22-year-old, traveling all over the place. But that really got me started. And from there, I worked in Boston at a hotel, and then I've been in destination marketing since 1988. And that's really about when organizations started to spring up that did what we do, which was utilize, in many cases, hotel tax revenue to promote their respective destinations as visitor destinations. So started way back when, and here I am leading, I think, the best destination marketing organization in the country, in the best city in the country. And yes. And it's been an incredible journey, and I'm never bored a minute of my life, believe it or not. Tired, but never bored.
Never bored, okay. So the typical branding for Boston, I don't even know how to say it. Boston. For as long as most of us can remember, includes images of Faneuil Hall, Freedom Trail, Beacon Hill, the Tea Party, lobster rolls, chowder. So fairly limited view of Boston. I'm sure you understand that. But at the beginning of your tenure, you embarked on a couple of bold changes. The first was changing the name of the Greater Boston CVP to Meet Boston. The second was launching this new brand promise, Boston Never Gets Old, since that was part of the image issue. The Boston Never Gets Old campaign did an excellent job of marrying tradition and innovation and moving the focus just from the central core area of Boston to the 23 distinct neighborhoods. So I have a two-part question. So let's start with the first one, which is, hear you talk about the rebrand and what were your goals and the promise Boston Never Gets Old. What prompted you to make these changes?
Well, a few things, actually. First of all, when I started, we had a very woefully underfunded organization, and we first had to go about identifying a funding stream that was dedicated to promoting tourism, but wasn't at the whim of the public entities that could sweep that money back away from us. So we formed a tourism destination marketing district, and it's been in operation now for 3.5 years. So our budget went from, as you alluded to, it went from about 10 million to now we're about $55 million. So we knew we had to compete on a global scale with cities like Chicago and New York City and DC and Philly. All of them had much larger budgets than we did. So without funding, we were never going to be able to get the word out about Boston. And through all of this, COVID came, as we all know, and the murder of George Floyd, obviously prompted a lot of us to really think long and hard about how do we really think about ourselves, our destinations, our population. Are we doing a really good job of representing everyone? And we weren't. Boston was not. We know that. Boston's had a reputation for many years of not being a welcoming city for all. So we ended up embarking on our first campaign, which was All-Inclusive Boston, which included a lot of research, firsthand research, with panels that were intentionally skewed towards, Black, Brown, LGBTQ populations to get their impression of what Boston was, both internally and then external. And what we found was not a surprise, although it was sort of a gut punch, was that most of those audiences, and even white audiences across the country, really associated Boston with being white, Irish, no offense, I'm Irish, Sheridan, my husband's name, but drunk, fanatics, sports fans that get into fights, right? And a lot of what we relied on to promote our destination, because we didn't have the funds to tell our own story, was popular culture. And so, it was the Matt Damon movies and the Ben Affleck movies. We love them, don't get me wrong, fantastic, great representatives of the city, but that's really what people saw. So we had a work cut out for us. So we did that campaign and then launched into the effort that you referred to, which was rebranding our organization to get rid of the alphabet soup GBCVB, which has been a godsend. My team here absolutely loves just saying Meet Boston. But as you were a very, very integral part of that panel, and we thank you for that, that it was probably a 6-month effort. And we met regularly. Carrie was there from the Red Sox. We sat around a table for many, many, many hours and tried to figure out what is Boston. And we really came to the fact that, what we already knew, Boston is a compilation of its incredible diversity and neighborhoods. So, we made that what we wanted to be, and we also wanted to combine that with sort of a modern take on what Boston is. A city always in motion, a city that was, as we like to say, founded but never settled. And we're still never settled. Look at this building right here, right? I mean, who would have thought you would put this building in the middle of ComAv in Boston? And it's so reflective of what Boston has become. And look at this beautiful room full of diverse faces. Like, that's what we really needed to nail down in our marketing. And I have to tell you, it has been splendidly successful on many levels. Not only is it that people like what we do, but it's effective. And I think that's the key, is that you want to make sure that if you're investing resources, it's effective. And I will say, and I've done brands before, you all have. Brands can go either way, right? Because you can think you have the best brand ever, and it can be a complete bomb and people just hate it. I will say, when we launched this brand, we had almost no negative feedback from it. So it resonated with people. And we did our homework, and you were part of that, Arun.
Right.
So
I was honored to be part of it, representing BU and the School of Hospitality. But I think exactly for that reason, can you sort of help everyone understand what is the process you undertook so that at the end of it, you ended up with a wide acceptance of what the branding and all the changes that were going to take place?
Yeah, we took the process very seriously. First of all, we looked at ad agencies from across the U.S. and Canada, and large and small. And we have a good sized budget, so it was a nice account for any ad agency. But ad agencies typically love destination branding because it's kind of sexy, right? It gets to talk about a city. And but anyway, we had a very, very rigorous process of vetting all of those agencies. And we knew if we picked a non-Boston agency, it could have been really perceived as, why are we hiring an outside firm to tell us what Boston is? But we considered all. And I think at the end of the day, we landed on a completely unanimous decision to hire what we thought was the best agency. And thank you, they were based in Boston. So that was so great to not have to fend off, that criticism. So we hired Allen and Gerritsen, and we put together this committee that you were on that we felt was really reflective of the different segments of, Boston's tourism economy, but also Boston's, we think, diversity. So, people like yourself and Carrie and, members of our internal team and our board, some hoteliers, Nia Grace from Grace by Nia, Ed Kane, who you all know as the, king of nightclubs in the city of Boston. Just like a really diverse group of people that all had very strong opinions, no question about that, and that's a good thing. But really, we felt like had a good sense of what is Boston, and we're also very open-minded to other people's opinions and options. So it was, like I said, it was a rigorous process. It was a long process, but we really feel like it was worthwhile. And we're still using the same campaign today. So Lindsay's here, our VP of Marketing. I think you were 1 week in when you started with us on that campaign, but the beauty of it is it's still working. And every campaign has its sunset. And Boston Never Gets Old is not a tagline. It's our campaign right now. So, it can change, within the next few years, but so far it's still resonating.
Yeah, I was really struck by when you collected such a diverse group of people to sort of help you in that process. I said, okay, this is going to get caught up in everyone's egos and everyone's opinions. But it surprisingly didn't. And like you said, it was almost unanimous at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was very clear and everyone agreed. So that was great.
It was a good thing. No, there were no fist fights in the room. It was great. Always a good thing.
No, we are from the world of hospitality.
Yes, we are.
We're not going to get into that. Okay. So numbers reveal a lot about the business. My background is accounting. Like we talked, you've quadrupled the budget of Meet Boston. That's very, very obviously impressive. And that was the need of the hour, like you said. How did you manage that achievement, and what is that funding source?
So it was a process that started probably 2 or 3 months after I took on my role at Meet Boston. I had a lot of skeptics. I had a few tears, as my husband knows, at night when I would come home and bang my head against the wall. But basically what we had to do, and I know we've got John Wilmoth in the room, who wasn't part of the process then, but is very active in our board now. But what we had to do was we had to come up with a funding source that, as I said, was not subject to the whims of politicians. And meaning we couldn't just keep begging and begging for more hotel tax revenue. Since I started, we've gotten this exact same amount of money from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that we got the day I started, $2.5 million, and we generate $400 million in hotel tax revenue. Since 2019, that number has not changed. So we knew we had to think bold. So we ended up talking with hotels about how about if we adopt this initiative that other cities have been doing. There are about 160, 70 that had been doing it at that time, called a tourism improvement district. We have a little different name. But now we add a fee, and we call it very, very specifically a fee, not a tax or an assessment, onto a hotel folio. It's a 1.5% fee, and that is what generates our funding. And although it's collected by the Commonwealth, the statute and the legislation states that it cannot be diverted anywhere but to this organization for the purpose that it was set out to be. And so the process involved legislation, which passed at 3 a.m. During COVID. I mean, it's funny, I always tell this story, but Arthur's here. It's 3 a.m., the phone rings, it's January, we're still in the middle of COVID, and Arthur's like, who is that? I said, oh, it's our lobbyist, Matt, and he's like, oh, all right. Rolls over and goes back to bed. Anyway, it passed, and we thank the governor for signing it. And then we just ended up having to petition. We developed a district plan, which is very specific to what we're going to achieve. We had to petition hotels. We had to get over 66% of the hotels in Boston to agree to be assessed. So they actually had to come in and sign a physical document. We had an open house and a happy hour and an open bar rather, and that helped. So they did. We had the fastest petition rate of any city, of any of the 170 formations in the history of formations. So we know how to do that, hospitality, right? And then we had a champion in the city council who's now Senator Lydia Edwards, who helped us develop the plan so that it would resonate with our city council, which of course is very focused on the neighborhoods and the constituents,
Right.
and less so on tourism. But we had a lot of wind at our back. We needed to get our valued employees back to work after COVID, and this was one way to help us do it. We had the hotel union behind us, which is very unusual, but Unite Here stood with us at a podium when we actually finalized the formation of the district. So the rest is history. We now have to re-up and reauthorize our district in August of 2026. People always ask me, what are you doing in preparation for reauthorization? And I say, I'm prepping for it every single day. Everything we do is about making sure these hotels are satisfied with the work that we're doing on their behalf and that the community is satisfied. And I think our work speaks for itself.
I was wondering what kind of backroom deal you must have struck with these lobbyists, but now I know it wasn't backroom, it was a barroom deal.
It was a barroom.
Yeah. So.
Yes.
So, and you just mentioned the 2026. You've made a real point of engaging businesses, small and large, and I personally admire the way you connect with people. I know that my own school, so many times you come as a guest lecturer, and Meet Boston is a client for many of our class projects. How do you do all? How do you engage with just this vast array of people and organizations? What gives you that factor to go ahead and do all of that?
I think it's because I really, and this maybe is helpful to the students in the room, as I worked my way up in this industry. I started out, my first job was, waiting tables. I was a terrible waitress, by the way. I mean, the worst waitress you could possibly imagine. Like, I remember pouring coffee one day over someone's purse, their overnight case, and I burned my hand, and I pulled my hand away and kept pouring the coffee into their overnight case. And I was like, how am I not fired yet? But I probably did it with a smile. But, if you work your way up and you get to understand the perspectives of everyone in the industry, then you have a real appreciation for why we do this. And I love to say to my team, as much as we love to celebrate those big wins, like jumping up and down, we got the World Cup, or we booked this huge convention and all of that, I always love to bring it back to them at the end of the day that the real reason we're doing this, the reason why we do Dine Out Boston, the reason we want World Cup is because there are housekeepers and there are housemen and there are bellmen and there are doormen. When we bring, and I get chills thinking about this, and I know John's like, yes, you're right, because he sees it. When we bring extra business into this community, which is our goal, they get an extra shift. And they might be able to buy that prom dress or go Christmas shopping or do something for their family or pay their rent that they couldn't have done because of the work that we're all doing on their behalf. And this morning I said we're like the wizard behind the curtain, because we are. We don't transact anything at Meet Boston. We have no transactions whatsoever, but we just make sure that the transactions that the community is making are beneficial and worthwhile. So I love communicating with people on every level. We do Berkmans in our office, and I like to say that I'm an introverted extrovert. So I love doing it until I can't anymore. Thankfully, I have this husband I can go home to at night and just be like, I'm done, I'm fried. But I get energy from it. I get just energized, and I've been doing it I'm 63, so I've been doing it since I was 25, and I'm never bored, like I said, so that's how I do it.
When I listen to your podcast, there's clearly you have a genuine connection with the guests that you have on the podcast. Now, how does that fit into your overall strategy?
Yeah, the podcast has been super fun. It's pushed me a little bit past my comfort zone because I'd never done anything like that before. Most people that podcast have not. But, what I love about it is, I have a great partner in Dave O'Donnell here from our VP of Comms, who is really good at sourcing great guests and then also doing the research and drafting some really good questions for me. But I'm a curious person by nature. So when you do a podcast, you have to be curious. You can't read a question off a piece of paper because that's not a podcast. That's like, a formal interview. So I become more curious. So the more that is being said in that room, in our podcast room, the more curious I become and the more I dig deeper into what the topic of conversation is. So I think for me, what makes it successful is that it's out of my genuine curiosity. None of it is forced. And I just think for us, that podcast helps us to sort of reinforce our brand and reinforce the people that we represent, because we do try and get a very diverse spectrum of guests on, from Glenn Jones from NBC 10 to Nia Grace and Ed Kane, and I get to interview Ken Burns next week. Like, how cool is that, right? And he's going to be in town, and he's got a new Revolutionary War documentary coming out. And I mean, I pinch myself to think, God, I could never have imagined I'd be doing this, but it's great to be able to talk to a huge, broad spectrum of people in our industry. And Danny Meyer, I'm coming after him next, wherever you Union Station people are. Okay, good. So yeah, so we're really excited about the podcast, and I'm glad that you listened to it. There's one. No, I'm kidding.
I've been promised if I say that I listen to your podcast, then at some point you listen to mine as well. So.
I promise.
Okay. A big part of your mission is to showcase Boston nationally and domestically as well as internationally. And I've seen your social media posts wherever you go. And you take the sounds of tastes and sounds of Boston everywhere with you. So tell us more about these activities and what are the goals of you going abroad and trying to sell Boston?
Well, my team here knows that my ultimate goal is global domination. So
okay.
we are seriously, I kid you not, we are on a mission to travel across the globe and put Boston either back on the map, or on the map in a different way than people might have thought about it before. So those are my goals. And my goals are, and as I said this morning, for those of you that were at the panel, is to do it in as authentic a way as possible. And the only way we can do that is not for me and Dave and Lindsay and Kate and my whole team here to be talking heads when we travel abroad. We actually have to bring the people that are Boston's true essence with us to tell that story. So we bring chefs. And, I said this morning, when our Paris firm was like, you're bringing Boston chefs to Paris to cook, seriously? We were like, yeah, but guess what? They had such a great time. And, we bring, Tracy Chang, who shows them how to, we're not making meatballs and pasta when we go abroad, just so you know. But we bring, Tracy Chang and Brian Moy and Doug Williams and, people that are really, truly the essence of what Boston is. And we bring storytellers, people that can truly talk about their love for Boston, their passion for Boston, and what differentiates it from other cities. It's a very competitive business I'm in, by the way, and getting more so by the very minute, I assure you.
So at BU School of Hospitality, we focus on experience innovation. And I know that you're doing so many innovative things to bring visitors, to have them keep coming back to Boston. So just describe a few of what are some of the things you're doing.
Well, I mean, I think the international travel is part of it. We innovate when we're abroad to tell our story in a unique and very different way. We want to make sure that we are partnering with the innovators in our community that can help us tell the story of innovation. So, we work with anyone and everyone. Lisa's here. She's, our liaison to all of the incredible groups. And, the groups and conventions that we host in Boston are a tribute to what people think of Boston as an innovative community in terms of medicine and science and all of that. So we latch ourselves on to the people that are innovating and make sure that that we're sort of a part of that bubble that they're creating for this great city. We latch on to the colleges and universities to the extent we can. We work with people like the Innovation Trail. If you haven't been on the Innovation Trail tour, it's unbelievable. They bring you through Boston and Cambridge, talk about all our incredible firsts. Our guests absolutely love it. But the things that they teach us about, and they teach visitors about how innovative Boston is amazing. And we talk about the Modernas of the world and all of that. So while we unfortunately don't have a franchise on innovative technology, we make sure that we latch ourselves on to people that are innovating and use that sort of as our launching pad for our conversations around that topic.
So at the beginning, you mentioned that you started as a tour guide, and now you are a powerful CEO. And we have a lot of hospitality students here who are obviously getting a degree in hospitality management. So what advice would you give them as they're starting out in their careers?
I would say make mistakes. It's hard to do, but I mean, and I remember early mistakes in my career, like you're devastated, like I can't believe I did that, like, and you don't sleep at night and all of that, but you learn from it and you move on from it, and you hopefully the next time can say, okay, I'm not going to do that again. And I always like to give the advice that my dad always gave me, and my dad was a huge inspiration to me. He was an incredible public speaker, and like me, he was very passionate and outgoing until he didn't want to be anymore. But at the end of the day, never burn a bridge. So, you know, I know we talked this morning about these are your people. They're going to be your people forever that you meet. But if something doesn't go your way, and don't lash out, don't just move on, because you never, ever know when you're going to encounter someone again. And we all have our ups and we all have our downs. What is that expression? Be careful who you're, you know, hurting on the way up, because, you know, they may be kicking you in the head on their way up when you're coming down.
When you're coming down.
Yeah, so that's kind of what I'd like to say is, and take some chances. I mean, I've taken a lot of chances, and being a woman in this business is, now it's more commonplace, but up until probably 2 years ago, I think I was one of 3 women running major first-tier city convention and visitors bureaus. Now we're ruling the world, so things are changing. But yeah, just take a chance, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but you never know until you try.
Thank you. Martha, it has been an absolute delight talking to you, and on behalf of the school, thank you so much for everything you do for the city as well as for our school. And now it is my honor to present you with this award.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We already did photos,
Oops.
so thank you. Thank you. I'm honored.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
And in addition to this, I also have a silver keepsake, a box with the word icon inscribed on it. For the icon that you are.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
What a nice surprise. Thank you. I couldn't possibly. Beautiful.
And one more special gift from one icon to the other. So Danny Meyer has sent this book, personalized, very autographed it from, he was an Icon Award winner a few years ago, and he has sent this book for you.
I'm fangirling again, because one of my favorite restaurants on the entire planet, Kate Davis, is Gramercy Tavern. Kate actually brought me an autographed cookbook signed by their chef, and this to me is amazing. And I haven't read it, so I'm really excited. I did read a lengthy New York Times Magazine piece on Danny a few years back before I was in Boston, and he is an amazing human being. So flattered, honored, and humbled by this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.